What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Granted. I'm Luke Grant. And this morning, I wanted to look back at last night's Eastern Conference Finals, Game 7, which saw the Boston Celtics edge out the Miami Heat 100-96. As someone who already watched their team punch a ticket to the NBA Finals, I really enjoyed watching it. It was a struggle, but a game in which Boston led from start to finish. You always felt like they were in control. They had Miami at an arm's length. In big moments in the game, they started to extend their lead to 7 and 9 points. And yes, at the end of quarters, Miami looked dangerous and they continued to close. But when push came to shove, it just felt like Boston had too much offense for Miami. Their three scorers, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they had 24, 24, and 25 respectively. And on the other side, Jimmy Buckets was there with 35 and 9. But once again, other than a cameo from Bam Adebayo, who had been asleep for 3 or 4 games throughout the series, he just didn't have enough help. It was the story of the series, and it was the story of Game 7 last night. Boston, they controlled the game. And why did they do so? It's because they didn't turn the basketball over. This was the biggest factor for me heading into Game 7. Throughout the series, the games in which Boston had struggled and those in which they dropped, they lost the turnover battle and it got out of control. In Game 3, they had 23 turnovers. In Game 6, they lost that one, 17 turnovers. In particular, Jason Tatum, he controlled the basketball and the flow of the game significantly better, and he made much better decisions. As a team, they had 13 turnovers. That's the ballpark you're aiming for if you're the Boston Celtics. The reason in which it was so important, well, Boston's got the number one defense in the NBA. We know that. We know how long and athletic that group is, led by Marcus Smart, the Defensive Player of the Year. But it's hard to defend when you're in transition and you're turning the balls over. Throughout the playoffs, they averaged 3.8 more points per game as a result of turnovers compared to what they did in the regular season. Miami does not have a good offense in the half court. They struggled mightily against this Boston unit. Boston dominated them. Outside of Jimmy Buckets, they looked lost in the half court. They didn't have a game plan. They set a lot of screens, but there wasn't a lot of movement off them. There were possessions last night where Kyle Lowry was just dribbling the ball in the half court, waiting to pass it to Jimmy Buckets in the post, and then the offense to evolve from there. It was just very static and very stationary, and Boston had their way. But because they didn't turn the ball over tonight, it just never looked like Miami were a serious threat. That is, until late in the fourth quarter. Speaking of the last quarter, Miami drew within 3 with 11 minutes to go. You started to think, okay, they've got the momentum. They're at home. This is the moment for them. Boston just clamped them down. 5 straight minutes of real time in the fourth quarter. They didn't score a bucket. They were 0 for 9 in that stretch with the Miami Heat. They couldn't get a look. They couldn't get anything to fall. And as I said before, they struggled in the half court. Boston weren't turning it over. And as a result, they took a stranglehold of the game. Look, the only negative for Boston during that run, they scored 5 points themselves. They didn't really, rip the heart out of the Miami Heat. And that was kind of the story of the game, always in control, but never really landing that final blow. So they're in cruise control. And then with 6 minutes to go, Jason Tatum gets the ball in the left wing, hits this sidestep 3, swishes it, game looks to be over. They're up by 12, and they've finally asserted their dominance. But the last couple of minutes were just an absolute mess for Boston. They didn't turn the ball over necessarily, but some of the looks they were taking early in the shot clock were difficult to fathom. Marcus Smart had 3 threes that he jacked up in the last quarter, all of which were poor options. And that's something that Golden State, when we talk about that matchup later, they're going to look to take advantage of that and his willingness to shoot the ball. But the decision-making in that period of the game in the last 2 or 3 minutes was really not good enough for Boston. They could have blown that game. Really, they should have blown that game, a game in which they never trailed, but they just didn't quite know how to close it. And that's going to be concerning heading into these big games. They lack that floor general. Look, I know Marcus Smart is that guy, and Boston fans think that he's the guy that can lead you to the promised land, make good decisions, but he's just not that calming presence, that excellent decision maker that you feel can control the tempo of a big NBA game. So they go on a run. And the result of these long rebounds and these missed threes, Miami start getting to the rim, layups, Jimmy Buckets is in there. Then they hit an enormous 3, and it's a 2-point game with 45 seconds left. They get a stop. They're in transition. Jimmy Butler jacks up the 3. Was it the right decision? It's difficult to say. I understand both aspects of it. Jimmy, they've just had 3 layups. They're getting to the rim easily. He can tie it up with a 2. That might be the best option. But at the same time, this guy's gassed. He's played every minute of Game 7. It's an opportunity right there to make the NBA Finals. He took it, pull up 3. He misses a few fouls. They end up losing 100-96, and Boston progress. They're the better team. Throughout the entire series, they're more talented, they're longer, they're athletic, and they're deeper. But you just never quite felt confident they'd get it done. So let's transition there now to the NBA Finals. The Golden State Warriors against the Boston Celtics starting in the Bay in a couple of days. It's going to be a fantastic affair. I think these are possibly the two best teams in the NBA that are coming together. You don't see it particularly often. We haven't seen it for a couple of years now. And look, I'm a Golden State fan, so there's going to be some bias in this analysis. But I think there's four things that I want to dive into that are really going to encapsulate why this series is so exciting and that will end up deciding the series. The first, I kind of touched on already when I talked about the last quarter, and that's Marcus Smart's shooting. I think that the Golden State Warriors are going to leave him open a ton. I talked about how he was overconfident and he struggled late in that fourth quarter last night. And they do this all the time with Russell Westbrook in big series against the Rockets. You've seen it when he was playing for Oklahoma City. They're going to do anything they can, anything and everything they can to get the ball out of Tatum's hands and Jaylen Brown's hands. Yes, Smart's improved. Yes, he's a better perimeter shooter than when he came into the league. But those looks and having him jack up threes in big moments is going to be an enormous win for the Golden State Warriors. I would expect them to rotate and leave him as the unmarked man to then flash late and try and dare him to take those threes. Expect a lot of that from Steve Kerr and his men on defense. The second talking point that I think will be crucial in deciding the outcome of this series, similar to Game 7 tonight, is going to be the turnovers. And it's not just for Boston, it's going to be for Golden State as well. Both of these offenses can get cute and they can be a little loose with the basketball. And we've seen them both turn over the ball a ton, both during the regular season and in the postseason as well. I mentioned it. You've had the Celtics turn the ball over up to 23 times. Golden State have hit that 20 plateau 3 times in the playoffs as well. It's going to be loose at times. But the team that controls it better is the team that's likely going to win those big games and win those big moments. Both of these defenses can play. Everyone's going to talk about Boston, but we all know that Golden State over the last 4 or 5 years, really since Steve Kerr took over, have had the second or third best defense in the NBA. They're fantastic. They're multiple. They're diverse. They're going to throw different zones at the Celtics. In the half court, they're going to make sure they don't switch. They're going to hedge more. We'll get to that in a minute. But the importance is going to be stopping transitional points and easy buckets. Allow your half-court defense to get set, to make good decisions, and make it very difficult. In these playoffs, I mentioned it, it's been an issue for the Celtics. They've let in almost 4 points more in the postseason off transition points and turnovers than they did in the regular season. Golden State, on the other hand, we know what they can do. We know these runs they can go on. They can go 20-2 on you in a third quarter in an instant. It's going to be crucial that both these teams look after the basketball better than they have, and it's going to be a deciding factor in this series. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the Golden State offense against the Celtics defense. Look, I think the Celtics offense is underrated. I think Golden State's defense is very underrated. But this is the matchup that's likely going to dictate the series. Golden State's offense is spectacular, and it's so different to the norm and the meta in today's NBA. You're not seeing a lot of ISO or just these pure screens and pick and rolls. There's so much motion, so many off-ball screens. There's such a high intensity and energy. And even though Steph Curry is the engine that drives this car, he doesn't have the ball. He doesn't dominate possession. He isn't a guy that's going to have a 45% usage rate like a Luka Doncic or anybody like that. And that's the beauty of this Golden State offense, the work off the ball. Now you shift over to the other side. You've got the Boston Celtics, who I talked about it. 85 points per 100 possessions in the half court throughout the playoffs. They have dominated when they're set. But Golden State aren't the Miami Heat. They've got more scoring options and they've got more movement. They've got Steph Curry. We all know what he can do on the big stage. He's been fantastic in the Western Conference Finals and in past final series as well. But Klay Thompson, you know you're going to get a 30-plus point game out of him in games 4, 5, or 6. It's almost inevitable. He just loves those big moments. They've been getting invaluable scoring out of Andrew Wiggins, a guy who looked like a 13 or 14 point a night type guy. Well, he averaged 19 points in the Dallas series. Then you've got Kevon Looney. You've got Jordan Poole coming off the bench who can score 16 to 20 points on any given night. They're so deep. There's so many options, and this system is truly incredible. We know that Steve Kerr was coached by Phil Jackson. by Greg Popovich. It's in his DNA, and this offense is a thing of beauty. I can't wait to see how they match up with Boston. As we've said, they're long, they're athletic. Marcus Smart is the best defensive player in the game right now. Jason Tatum has improved to probably an average level in the NBA. You've got Jaylen Brown, who's a plus defender as well. They've got rim protection. They've got Al Horford, who can play as that stretch five. They have a lot of options. They're such a good unit. They're disciplined. And as I said, in that half court, they've been very, very damaging through the playoffs. The Boston Celtics defense throughout the entire playoffs has been spectacular. Opposing offenses, they've averaged 6.5 points per 100 possessions less in the playoffs than they did in the regular season. So Boston's taking pretty much 6 to 7 points off you every single night based on what you were doing in the regular season. Then on the other side of the coin, Golden State, they're averaging 7 points per 100 possessions more than other defenses were allowing in the regular season. Both of these units have been superb, and I can't wait to see them go head to head. And let's flip it around right now and talk about the Golden State Warriors defense to finish, because I think this is a good point and something that Miami did a little, but I think Golden State are going to do a whole lot more. In that series against Dallas in the Western Conference Finals, we saw Golden State hard hedge a ton. What does that mean? It means when you're setting a screen, the guy who's defending that screen is going to attack the primary ball handler. He's going to go hard, but it's going to be a fake. He's then going to pull back, make that attacking player retreat, and then his defender is going to be able to recover and get back in front. We saw it with Luka Doncic, Andrew Wiggins, giving him time with Steph Curry and Jordan Poole and not allowing them to switch. That's been an issue in the past for Golden State, getting these smaller guards on these true wings and dominant ball handlers. They're not allowing it to happen. And as a result, Steph Curry is seeing good success when he's defended the screener on those pick and rolls. He was taken advantage of and attacked a lot throughout that Dallas series. Really, after game one, they went after him a lot. But out of the 36 defenders in the playoffs who have had at least 100 possessions guarding a screener, Steph Curry has come in 18th, and that's pretty good. He hasn't been a liability on defense, and the hard hedge has been a huge reason why. Then if they want to get a big on them, well, Kevon Looney's going to be on the floor more than he has in past series. You look at the Memphis series, he wasn't really a factor. He was dominant. He was dominant in that Western Conference Finals against Dallas. When he was the guy who was being switched on and defending the screener, he was top 5 in the playoffs out of the 36 guys who had had 100 possessions defending such players. So I'm fascinated to see how the Celtics break them down and attack them if they're willing to take the Looney switch. Are they going to try and attack the hard hedge? Are Golden State going to be more aggressive sending Steph and also Jordan Poole like we saw early in the series? They kind of faked and just hedged a little bit. But as the series went on, they got more aggressive and they saw more success. Is that how they're going to contain Tatum? I would think it is. I think the same for Jaylen Brown. Are they going to try and get these guys into post and try and get some post-ups on Wiggins, maybe Klay Thompson, who could see some time on Jaylen Brown? It's going to be a fascinating matchup. I can't wait to see how that side of the ball unfolds as well. But now we've come to the point of the show where we have to pick a winner. Now I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm a Golden State fan, and that's on the record. Wearing a Jazz hat, I know. I like retro logos. You're going to have to live with it. But I think Golden State win this series. I think they win it 4-2. I'm tempted to say 4-1, but I think the Boston Celtics are just going to push them a little bit harder than Golden State have been pushed. They haven't been perfect by any stretch. They've had some games off, just like Boston have. They've been a little Jekyll and Hyde, but I think they're just more talented. I think they're going to be more clean and crisp and decisive in big moments. They're an experienced team in the finals. You've seen Steph, Dre, Klay there a million times. Looney's been there. Andre Iguodala could be back. They have so much big-time experience, championship pedigree. The Boston don't yet have. They're a raw team when it comes to finals. And I think that's ultimately going to be a big factor. That and the fact that Steph Curry is going to win his first finals MVP. This has been Granted. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm also over at Play Like a Jet for all my NFL content. Check that out as well. This is Luke Grant, and I'll see you next time.